Good evening, and welcome to the April 20th, 2021 regular meeting of the Gary Common Council. As is our custom, we'll begin with a moment of prayer. Our parliamentarian, Councilman Ron Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Shall we pray? Eternal God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your goodness, your mercy. We thank you for how you watched over us on last night. And we thank you for this appointed time that you have allowed us all to assemble ourselves, oh God. Lord, we thank you for victory on today, oh God. We thank you for the George Floyd case, oh God. We thank you for the outcome, oh God. We thank you for justice being served, oh God. Lord, we ask that you bless that family. Lord, we ask that you bless every loved one that have dealt with any type of police brutality, oh God. We ask that you be their comforter, oh God, in questions they may have and unanswered answers, oh God. We ask that you comfort right now. We ask that you bless our sick and shut in. Bless each and every last one of us as elected officials, oh God. Bless us with wisdom and knowledge, oh God, to do what you have called us to do. In your mighty Son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. At this time, we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Here.
Councilman Brewer.
Here.
Councilwoman Brown.
Present.
Councilman Brown. Councilman Brown. Councilwoman Caldwell. Councilwoman Caldwell. Councilman Lane.
Here.
Present.
Oh, sorry.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Here.
Councilman Lay.
Present.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Present.
Councilman Williams.
Here.
And President Godwin.
Present.
Mr. President, there are 8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 8 members present, we have a quorum to conduct the business of the Gary Common Council. Council members, you have received the minutes of our April 6, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to approve said minutes?
So moved, Mr. President.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Brewer and seconded by Councilpersons Atkins and Weatherspoon. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay. Councilman Lay.
Looks like
Councilman
he may have dropped off.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 7-0, the minutes of our April 6, 2021 meeting are approved. Assignment of council pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
CPO 2021-27, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of funds within the fire department to cover fleet insurance and authorizing additional appropriations for Fire Department Fund 224. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Malik L. Harper, City Controller.
Ways and Means.
Mr. President, ends assignment of pending ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilwoman Atkins.
President, the Ways and Means Committee has before it CPO 2021-27. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilman Michael Brown. Okay. Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell.
Yes.
Mr. President, for the record, the majority of the Ways and Means Committee has approved this ordinance for reporting out to the council.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins.
Mr. President, the Ways and Means Committee would like to report out CPO 2021-27.
Thank you very much. That ends our assignment of council pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading. At this time, any council members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
good evening, everyone. I have a few announcements that's going on in the 5th District. First of all, a contractor for NIPSCO will be closing Grant Street between 21st and 25th Avenues during the working hours starting today and lasting through Friday, April the 23rd. Grant Street will only be closed during working hours and will be open to traffic at night. The detour will be posted and will use 25th Avenue, Broadway, and 21st Avenue. Also, last Friday, the folks from U.S. Steel, the Railcats, Calumet Region Little League, and Home Field Advantage provided resources for the materials, and the Parks Department provided dumpsters. All of this going on was Roosevelt's Little League field, the Southeast baseball field. They got it ready for the season. So now we need a volunteer base to maintain it every year so it stays that way. So I want to give a special thank you for all those people that were involved, and especially to Nathaniel George, because he was there and he took pictures and I posted them on Facebook. So again, thank all those people. Horizon Bank is now in the 5th District, and they are having a grand opening tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Their new location is 36 and Grant. That's across the street from the village. Glad they're there. However, I won't be there. And the reason I won't be there is because I just found out today. And I'm kind of tired of getting the last minute invites. Like I wasn't at the baseball field Friday because they didn't tell me until Thursday night. When they opened up the FEMA vaccination place at Roosevelt, they didn't tell the council till the day before. So the council, and I'm speaking for my colleagues, would love to attend any and everything that's happening in their districts and throughout the city. But we need time. You know, I have a job, I have a family, and stopping and just at the last minute calling me, telling me, hey, can you make it? You didn't think about me when you were planning this? And the part B to that is, if you wait to the last minute, you probably didn't want me there anyway. So please keep that in mind when you have an event going on in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell, and amen. I'm in full agreement with you. Any other members for special and select?
Mr.
Councilman Lay
President.
is recognized.
Two things. I will not say amen to that. That certainly, I think, is her position. I have no problem with that being her position. Certainly, if I'm not notified, maybe a day before, certainly I will make the decision at that time to attend or not attend. Same way if I'm notified a week ahead, I will make the same decision. I did have a question concerning the letter, Mr. President. You indicated you were writing a letter when you sent back the ordinance back to the BZA. Did you make it clear in your letter, I don't need to see it, that I was not part of that? Because certainly if they make a change, those individuals that agreed to it possibly have subjected themselves to being sued, not only in their official capacity, but maybe their individual capacity.
Yeah,
So-
I did not write a letter yet. So, and if
Okay.
I do, I will make sure to, it'll be just for me personally. As a
okay.
council person.
Just you, not as president, but you.
No, first
just-
district.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Atkins.
Thank you. Just a couple of announcements. First, I wanted to let the 4th District residents know that our community meeting that was scheduled for the 22nd of April will be rescheduled at a later date. So we probably won't have a council meeting, it'll probably be sometime next week. And so I will get that information out utilizing our robocall as well as our contact list and also on social media. If you do not have any of that connection, then please call up to the Gary Common Council office at 219-881-1315 to speak to Ms. Karen Lane Friday of this week to get that information if you're not on our contact list. I did want to thank Code Enforcement Officer Robert Smith. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, he and I took a ride around of the 4th District so that I can show him the problem areas and that we created a pipeline of different things that we saw. And so we have seen some action in terms of identifying resolves or resolutions to some of those things that we did see. And so I do want to also thank Ms. Rachel Caesar as well as Dee Barbara and the team for the general services team for getting out and doing some cleanups within the 4th District. I did see you guys out there yesterday and the day before, and so I appreciate that. Also, 4th District residents, during our March community meeting, I did let you guys know about the updates in terms of demolition that was happening around the 4th District. I would like to say that Cedric Kirkendall, who is over demolition for the city of Gary, has done a great job in keeping me abreast in terms of when those demos will take place. And again, I have seen action. They did start about 2 weeks ago in the 4th District, and then more recently on the east side within the last week. 2 properties have definitely came down within a matter of days. So to those employees that are supporting the efforts of the 4th District, I do want to thank you on behalf of my constituents. Lastly, residents of the city of Gary, the Railcats will be having a career fair this upcoming Saturday, which is April the 24th. The career fair will take place between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. and it will be located on the 2nd level, the suites level of the stadium. You are to enter at the VIP gates, which is right as you approach 5th Avenue and go up to the 2nd floor. So again, the Gary Railcats will be holding a career fair this upcoming Saturday. It will be between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. located on the 2nd level at the suite level and enter by the VIP gates. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer?
I do have a question, and Councilwoman Barnes Conway, I do agree with you in your last statement about being notified in a properly manner, because I would like to attend if I'm able to attend. But back to what Councilman Lay was talking about, as far as the letter being sent back to the BZA. I was informed today that the BZA didn't meet, but they did not take any action on what was sent back from the council. And I don't know, Mr. President, if you have any response to why that was not on the agenda for any action to be taken on that.
Well, maybe because it didn't get in by the clerk's deadline, right? In terms of our agenda. You're talking about they didn't take action?
No. For the one for the facility that was going to be.
Why the BZA didn't have it on their
Right.
agenda? Oh, I'm not sure.
I didn't know if you had any coordination with them.
No. I know I talked to Mr. Bones about it and expressed opposition, but I didn't know whether they had it on their.
Okay.
Yeah, but I guess maybe Mr. Berea can give us some insight.
Okay.
You're available, Mr. Berea?
Because I was going to reach out to the board president today and I didn't get a chance to, but I see Mr. Pohl look like he wants to speak on it.
All right, Mr. Pohl?
Yeah, I'll put it this way. I don't think, I know that there was a motion to, I believe the motion was to send it back to the commission, or send it back to the BZA, the last item, the Ironwood item.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Right.
That's correct.
Now, I don't, and to be honest, I don't know if that's, and I'd expressed my concern at the time. I don't know if that's a legitimate action that can be taken by this council. I don't believe that if the council does not agree with the BZA's recommendation, the council has the authority to take its own action, but I don't think it can be sent back and there be a request to change their recommendation. And that's what I'd stated during that meeting at that time.
Attorney Williams?
Yes. Of course, I disagree with Attorney Poe. You absolutely could send it back. However, I do not believe the council can compel the BZA to take action. I have spoken to I've spoken to members of the BZA, and it's been made clear to me that they have no intention on doing anything with this. For that reason, I think you can exhaust whatever remedy you deem necessary. But they've made it clear to me that they will not reconsider the issue. So at some point, the council is going to have to just take action on it, because we don't have a mechanism to compel the BZA to act.
Well, and Mr. President, if I may just follow up, you know, in an instance where the BZA provides a recommendation, for it to be sent back to the BZA with an order to change your recommendation is, I think, the arbitrary is the definition of arbitrary and capricious. There's been nothing that has been changed, you know, as far as any new facts that have been presented, any change in the law or anything else. So if the change in recommendation was done by the BZA, it would on its face be arbitrary and capricious. They've already provided a recommendation. Now,
let me ask this, if I may. They provided no recommendation, right?
Absolutely.
that is a recommendation.
Which is in fact arbitrary and capricious, because every other time they do. I don't know why they do, when they do, or what they gave no reason why they didn't provide one. Because I didn't see it. I didn't see any letter. I didn't see any explanation explaining why they departed from their general practice of providing a recommendation. Same with the zoning administrator. So
And
it was just no recommendation.
I have to respectfully disagree. It is stated in state statute that no
Okay.
recommendation is a legal recommendation. That
Sure,
is
but
on its
what
face not.
okay, Mr. Poe, what I think the reason that it got enough votes to be sent back was a rationale for it, not them to necessarily change their recommendation, but for them to actually provide a reason for why they were giving no recommendation.
And I think they did provide that. I think that was discussed at length by
Can Mr. Berea, I don't know if we really want to exhaust the time now. When it comes up on third and final, which I suppose will be the next meeting, then we can have a, you know, full conversation on it. I don't know whether we need to do that during special and select.
Well, I asked the question because something was sent back there, so it's pretty much in limbo right now. I don't think the council just can put it on their agenda for third and final if the council have taken a proper action.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that something needs to happen on one of the other ends. Either council needs to reconsider their vote, probably a recommendation to reconsider that vote that was taking place there, or the BZA needs to take a vote during their next meeting and say, we're going to send back the same thing, you know, as we sent it to the council, if that's their standpoint. But something needs to happen, because right now it's just sitting in limbo. The council is not taking action on it. It seems like the BZA is not taking action. So one body's going to have to do something with it.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay?
I agree with both Councilman Brewer and Attorney Poe that the solution lies within those two individuals. You're become what is called in the law almost like the 13th juror, which is a court. If a decision comes back that the court, the final arbitrator, does not appreciate, the court has two options. One, of course, is declare a mistrial, which is basically what it should do. Or I have seen, in fact, where the court itself rules and says, well, you solve it on appeal. So I agree with Mr. Brewer, and he and I did discuss it. Something, you know, is going to have to be done. And I agree with Mr. Poe. They follow state law. You may not like state law, but that is the state law. And certainly you just can't come up with, say, well, there's nothing in that statute that says you can't do it. There's nothing in the statute that says we can't fine them $100 each either. But I would suggest that we couldn't get away with that. So I think we're going to have to look at one of two things, what Mr. Poe is talking about, or ultimately what Mr. Brewer is talking about. I don't see any other way around. Or
Mr. Chair,
do nothing and wait on your letter, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with everything Attorney Pohl said. I agree that it is in state statute that they can render a no opinion. I disagree that no opinion is an opinion. However, at the end of the day, the council does not have the authority to compel them to act. And if they fail to act, then the council must move forward one way or another. There's also a statute that you need to be mindful of, that if no action is taken by this body within 90 days, then the action is deemed as passed, approved. Now, this is a very unique situation. As I stated previously, in the 8 years that I served on the zoning board, we never gave a no opinion. I don't even understand that. But it is statutorily a option for the zoning board. But no action after 90 days will actually end up in an action of the variance being approved. And you need to be aware of that. If you allow those 90 days to lapse, that is what will occur under statute.
Thank you.
I agree with that, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Any other members for special and select? Well, I will just add, if there are no others, that I want to recognize the life of Mr. Gary Goldberg, a longtime Gary business owner, the owner of Miller Pizza, who died last week. I went to his visitation yesterday at the temple. I'm sorry, on Sunday at the temple, and was able to speak with his wife, Elsie, and children and family. And it was certainly a sad occasion, but he was such a very gracious person. Not a lot of words, but a lot of action, and very, very supportive and very involved in the community. And I know that so many folks across the city and region enjoy Miller Pizza Company. And we want to thank him and his family for their many years of dedicated service to this community. And we know they're going to keep going, and just want to send my condolences to their family. Also, we will have the next First District Community Meeting this Thursday, April 22nd at 6:30 p.m. It will be via Zoom. If you need information on how to log on, please call the council office at 219-881-1315. We'll be discussing public safety as well as beach patrol. We prepare for the coming season. Chief Ryan Evans, as well as Officer Simon Lilly, will be our guest. So that's April 22nd, this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Yesterday, we hosted a very successful property tax questions session with Deputy Chief Ed Golson of the Calumet Township Assessor's Office. Had a lot of participants, both on Facebook as well as on the Zoom. That session was about 45 minutes. It will be provided on YouTube. And so I'll make sure that we send the link out as soon as it's available. For those who weren't able to participate live or don't have access to Facebook, we can share the link on a variety of platforms. It was also mentioned that there are 119 properties that are particularly under review. And the request was made to make that list public. And Deputy Chief Golson said he would do that. And so when I receive those lists of properties, I will share those in the various media available to do so. Lastly, as it was mentioned during our prayer, certainly I am personally happy about the verdict with Mr. George Floyd. And we all know that the tensions around race and policing in our country have existed for a long time. And I know a lot of us perhaps were on pins and needles, and it was certainly relieving to hear that there will be some measure of justice for Mr. George Floyd. So definitely want to keep his family and that community and all communities across this country and world where we know police brutality is a challenge. On May 8th, the Miller Garden Club is having its annual plant sale at the Aquatorium. This will go on from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. It is a Mother's Day theme. There will be live music as well as boxed lunches. That's May 8th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Aquatorium, the Miller Garden Club. annual plant sale. Lastly, I did ask our Attorney Williams, I wanted him to discuss a particular statute just for the edification of this body and maybe even the general public. It's particular, the statute is Indiana Code 36-4-7-8. Ordinances, additional appropriations, or decrease. It reads, after the passage of the appropriation ordinance, the city legislative body may, on the recommendation of the city executive, make further or additional appropriations by ordinance unless their result is to increase the tax levy set under Indiana Code 6-1.1-17. Period. The legislative body may, by ordinance, decrease any appropriation. The executive may, by executive order, decrease, not increase, but decrease the appropriation made for any executive department. I wanted to ask Attorney Williams just to explain that statute for this body.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as we spoke earlier, I believe it's quite self-explanatory that the mayor has the authority to decrease without the consent of this council. He does not have the authority to increase. Moreover, the council has the authority to decrease. Now, it would have to be done by ordinance. So, of course, the mayor would have the authority to veto that ordinance if he deemed necessary, and the council would then have the option to override that veto. But that is absolutely permissible, legal, and I stress legal action that the council could take if they deemed necessary. And that is a tool of government within the check and balance system of government. That's a tool afforded the legislative body.
Thank you, Attorney Williams. I appreciate that. I am done with my special and select. Just want to give anybody else an opportunity who may want to say anything, didn't get a chance to.
I would like to respond, but I'll wait till the other, since I've spoken once, I'd wait for the other council members to say something.
Chair.
Councilman Williams?
Yes, I guess I'll take this moment to announce next month's 6th District Community Forum, which will be Thursday, May 20th at 6:00 p.m. via Zoom. Call the council chambers and they will give you all the information. The code's never changed. So if you have a previous code, just log into Zoom and join me on May 20th, Thursday, May 20th.
Thank you, Councilman Williams. Any other members for special and select? Councilman Lay?
My question, you said there's 119 properties under review. I would assume there are probably thousands of property in the city of Gary. How was the 119 decided? Was that decided by the assessor's office?
Yes, so the Calumet Township Assessor was saying they were taking a closer look at a particular, there's 97 neighborhood codes, and I believe it's 2512, the lakefront, where there were the sharpest increases in the city. And so they were taking an additional review of 119 properties within that neighborhood.
So that's basically within the first district then?
That's correct.
All 119?
Right. There was 119.
So there was nothing wrong with anyone in the fourth district?
No, they didn't say that. They just said that in particular, they had done, well, they did say in general that much of the city had remained with some distinctions pretty stagnant in terms of valuation. The highest increases in Calumet Township were for Griffith, and in particular about 3 or 4 neighborhood codes in the Miller area. And so Mr. Golson pointed out that 119 of those were, I guess, under some kind of additional review that they had taken on themselves to look into.
Without the people applying, I mean, now that's a different.
Well, they got a barrage of complaints and calls. And so I think in response to that, that's probably what prompted the review.
Okay. Going to the statute cited by the Attorney Williams, I agree the statute is there. I guess that's where we all seem to differ from the very beginning. I do not believe 36-4-7-3C should exist. Once it exists, it's merely a conflict there. So it's clear that it is conflicting with that statute and any other statute to the contrary. I believe the statute basically is unconstitutional. I believe the mayor, in fact, when he analyzed it, that's what the statute says in plain language. He can increase and decrease, and it stops. I'm aware of the former suit. I just think that's going to, and I understand why you said it. Yeah, it conflicts with 8, but I don't think it should be there. And again, I guess in the very near future, that question will be resolved for all second and third class cities in the state of Indiana. I assume that's where whatever we're going to do is going.
Absolutely. You know, I agree with you on that. Any other members for special and select? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Council pending ordinances and resolutions on third and or final reading.
You're on mute, Ms. Town.
Madam Clerk? I think you're muted. Yep.
CPO 2021-05, an ordinance granting a residency waiver for employment with the City of Gary, Indiana, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
This would be Councilwoman Brown. That's you. You're muted. You're muted. Councilwoman, you're muted. All right.
Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2021-05 on third and final reading.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
This is on the Personnel Committee.
Well, I know it's the proper second. Some people want to executive session and have executive session.
They are, so we need to send them there.
Okay.
Right. So I don't know why I thought that we made that clear at the last meeting, but for some reason they are on the agenda.
Only thing they say we were sent, but we never
Signed a date.
We just
Right.
never, right, we never.
We
scheduled
can't
a
hear
date.
Mr. Brewer. He's
Okay.
moved. You can hear him, but you're in chambers together.
Yes, sir. Councilman Brewer?
Yeah, that's correct. You should get assigned to executive session. It was discussed, but it was not properly assigned. So they need
Right.
to be assigned tonight in the public.
What I want to ask, if I may, Councilwoman Brown and Attorney Williams, just for efficiency, since we're going to likely do the same thing for 5, 6, 7, 17, and 18, can all of these be taken up collectively and basically assigned to be sent for us to vote to send them to executive session? Attorney Williams?
They can, Mr. Chair, and I believe they previously were.
Right, just no date was determined.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd strongly encourage that we add this to our discussions.
You're breaking up.
Executive session.
You broke up a little bit on the last sentence you said.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that this be added to the April 28th executive session.
Okay, so she's gonna make that motion, not a motion for passage.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Brown?
Mr. President, I move the CPO 2021-05, 06, 07, 017, and 018 be moved back to executive session.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded to move the stated ordinances to executive session, which we already know has been scheduled for April 28th. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. President.
I'm going to
I yield.
Councilwoman Atkins and then Councilman Lay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a comment, and this may be for Mr. Paul. So, Mr. Paul, there was one additional employee that should be added onto this. We do not have an ordinance for that individual yet. But I don't even think this needed to be an ordinance, but just to give you the heads up that we should also discuss that last individual during the executive session as well.
I'm sorry. So I'm not sure which individual you're talking about.
Edward Tolliver, if I'm not mistaken, is the name.
Okay. And your
We've
is your
never.
request
My request
have
is to make sure that we have that as a discussion point in the executive session, that we have never discussed that in the prior sessions at all.
Okay. And that's going to be an executive session that we're going to be invited to, the administration?
Absolutely, I believe so. And the HR representative and whoever the supervisor is, I believe, who's requesting the waiver.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Attorney Williams?
to be clear, this is an in-person executive session, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right.
And what was the time and date on that?
It will be April 28th. I believe it is at 5:30.
Yeah, it's Wednesday, April 28th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay.
in person.
Councilwoman Atkins, Beverly Edwards should be on that list as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, so please take note of that, Mr. Cole. Okay, Councilman Lay.
Specifically, I'm going to vote no as to, I believe it's 17 and 18, but I also will be voting no. I know it's unclear, but it will become clear why I'm separating a no vote. But I'm going to vote no on everything you're attempting to do by sending it back to the executive session. But very specifically, 17 and 18, I believe that's the EMT individuals. And again, as I've indicated, well, their names are not in these documents, so it look like they should be very specifically names in there. But mine go to the EMTs. Absolutely no to those and no to the other. I guess now it's 5. I'm not at all sure about the 2 that just were added without them even being part of an ordinance. I don't think that's a real good procedure, but it's a lot of things that we do as a council that I disagree with, but it's done anyway.
Well, I will say that I agree with you that.
Look like they should ask first. That's what I'm saying. We're now reaching in there and putting them there without them even asking. I guess they're asking for waivers. I guess I'm not privy to what they're doing. These last 2 individuals.
Well, let me say, I do agree with you that all the names should be in the titles, just for good order. I'm getting a little feedback. Just for good order and being able to know what we're considering. And I think we talked about that maybe about a month ago, making sure it was specific. I think what happened is that Councilman Atkins, we initially got a list of persons that included the persons that Councilwoman Atkins and Councilman Barnes Caldwell, those names. And I don't believe that those names are reflected in these 5 ordinances that are before us. Is that correct, Mr. Cole?
I believe so. If memory serves correctly, we had provided we had originally provided the list of, I believe, 3, then we added the EMTs shortly thereafter. Then I do recall there being a request for a request that the names be added to the titles of the ordinance. I think it got sent to the personnel committee, but I don't think there was ever a personnel committee meeting that was that was scheduled following that. I think that's where we've left off, and it just came back on the general meeting agenda.
Right, and then we said we getting feedback. Needed to have the executive session in order, that was the appropriate way to do it after our lovely news stories and so forth. And that's why we're going to do it in an executive session and not public, which would be the appropriate way to do it.
And
then let me just ask this as it relates to the EMT. I see that Chief O'Donnell is on. These EMT personnel are already employed. This is not part of their application, but they are currently already working for the city of Gary. Is that correct, Chief O'Donnell? You're muted.
You're muted.
I apologize. Good evening, Councilman.
Good
Yes, sir. We had to employ them, those individuals.
Thank you. So they're already working. This is not a matter of holding up their application.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
If I could, Mr. President, I think, and if memory serves correctly too, the reason for having the executive session in person were two reasons. One, because it was personnel that was going to be discussed and we wanted to keep information confidential. The other being that meeting was going to be scheduled during the regular work hours, in order to have the employees be there during the day. I think that was something that was discussed. Does that ring a bell?
Well, it was discussed, and I think we had a conversation, and the basics of it was that they're asking us for something. And when the time is set, the time is set. I may want to vote at 8 p.m., but I can only do it between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., right? So this is the time that works for the council, and they're asking us to grant them an exception to our ordinances. So I don't think we didn't think, because obviously we chose the time, that it's inappropriate for them to come when asked. I mean, it's not midnight, it's a reasonable hour.
No, I'm just saying
that was the reason
my
5:30 was chosen.
And all I was saying is that was my recollection as to why that was proposed. And then I don't know if the individuals, if there was going to be the option for the individuals to participate telephonically, if it was going to happen after hours, after that issue was brought up. The individuals, the actual employees, because the administration is who is actually requesting the waiver, not not actually the employees.
Right. Well, I know it will be in person, and I believe it was the notion was that the supervisor, in this case, it would be, I believe, the mayor, for much of these, would be the one asking the council for the waiver. So
yes, the administration.
Right.
I got smoke. Shit.
So please make sure you're muted, Shanice Kip, I believe. In any case, I think that the executive session is going to be April 28th at 5:30 p.m.
April 28th, yeah.
Okay. And so
we had 5:30. Is it 5 or 5:30?
5:30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any other questions and discussion?
Who is supposed to appear? For instance, is the mayor appearing for the people he's asking for? Or are you bringing the individuals back themselves? That's where it's becoming unclear, especially after Attorney Poe just spoke. I thought the elected officials, wherever these individuals were the ones coming in.
I agree. And so that's what the ordinance says. The ordinance says that the mayor, the city clerk, or city judge within their individual areas, or common council president in this case, would have to come before the council to make the petition. So I don't believe it's necessary for the employees to come, but if the administration felt it was necessary to bring them for clarity or questions that needed to be answered, then I suppose they could do that.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing against that. I just think they have to come.
Right, they for sure have to come.
Yes.
Right. Attorney Williams, did you want to add anything on that?
I don't. I agree with you just.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions or discussion,
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer?
just one thing I would like to ask administration, if we just added 2 more names, I would like to make sure that this is everyone that we have done at this time. If we're talking about a waiver for individuals, I don't want us to piecemeal this thing together. If we need to do a waiver, let's bring them all before us. Let's have this discussion at once. Now we have an executive session this month with another group and that. Let's just deal with it now and let's move forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. So I would ask that you, Mr. Pohl, or whoever in the administration is going to be managing this process, to work with the HR director, or I would imagine that would be the person, to identify those who have surpassed the 6-month grace period that the ordinance provides, who would then, of course, need a waiver, or those who may be imminently about to surpass it and in need of a waiver to avoid being in violation of the ordinance. So if possible, it would be best to collect all the names as Councilman Brewer suggests, and we can take care of that then. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
No.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 7 yes, 1 no.
With 7 votes in the affirmative, CPO 2020-05, 06, 07, 17, and 18 will be discussed in the executive session on April 28, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. in the City Council chamber.
CPO 2021-16, an ordinance for the City of Gary, Lake County, Indiana, authorizing additional appropriations for the Park and Recreation Fund, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Arlene Coleman, acting City Controller.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2021-16 on third and final.
There a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Councilpersons Mary Brown and Dwight Williams. We'll have the overview at this time.
Getting back to my home.
Someone needs to mute themselves. Who's providing the overview? This is Cole. Are you providing the overview? I don't see Ms. Colvin on here.
I stepped away for a second. I'm sorry. Which ordinance was this?
This is the additional appropriations for the Park and Recreation Fund, CPO 2021-16.
16.
Oh, I do not have, I'm not familiar with this one. Hold on, let me see if Ms. Colvin's available.
No more meeting. Okay, let's see here. Do we have anyone from the Parks Department on here or?
We don't.
Okay, Attorney McCain.
Mr. Pohl is checking with Ms. Colvin. Neither of us were prepared to make the overview.
Okay. No problem. Shall we, if this is, probably can't do it from a parliamentary perspective, since we're in the middle of a vote, I was hoping that we could somehow move forward in the interest of time, but I don't know how we can do that appropriately. Attorney Williams? So we can withdraw the motion. So perhaps,
That's correct.
thank you. Perhaps Councilwoman Atkins?
Okay, Mr. President, I move to withdraw the previous motion to pass CPO 2021-16 on third and final.
Been moved and properly seconded by Council Members Brewer and Barnes Caldwell. Roll call, Madam Clerk. You're muted.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
No.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 7 yes, 1 no.
7 votes in the affirmative. CPO 2021-16. The motion to pass it is withdrawn. Motion to move for passage is withdrawn. Please proceed, Madam Clerk.
CPO 2021-24, an amendment to the Gary Civil Rights Ordinance 9269, sponsored by Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell of the 5th District.
That's Councilwoman.
We'll have the overview by Ms. Hanifa.
We need to move for passage.
Oh,
Councilwoman Atkins, I believe that was Parks, Recreation, and Culture. I believe so. Yep.
All right, sorry about that. Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2021-24 on third and final.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Atkins and seconded by Councilwoman Brown and Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. We'll have the overview at this time. Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Ms. Hanifa, are you there?
I see her here on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Hanifa Khalik, are you prepared to do the overview? We're having an overview problem this evening.
I can provide an
Okay.
overview until Ms. Khalik is able to rejoin.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Ultimately, what this is this is the second amendment to the Civil Rights Ordinance. I would say probably the last couple of years. The previous one included the amendment to include the observance of sexual orientation and gender identity. This one, this amendment to the ordinance includes, the observance of age as a one of the classes for which the Gary Human Relations Commission would include as a claim. So age discrimination would become a claim for which they would grant or be granted authority to basically exercise jurisdiction over. In addition to that, the ordinance seeks to also ensure that the Gary Human Relations Commission could also exercise jurisdiction outside of, or claims outside of just the municipality of Gary. So essentially, it'll allow claims from other parts of Indiana to be brought before the Gary Human Relations Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Would you like to add anything, Ms. Attorney Khalik?
Well, thank you so much, Councilman. Good evening, Councilmen and Councilwomen. And I think Attorney Pohl did an excellent job. I do apologize. I was in another window and couldn't, for some reason, click back into the window that I had open. I think what Attorney Pohl said here is complete and thorough. We're just expanding our scope and wanting to serve the City of Gary residents as much as possible. And with passage of this amendment, we're definitely going to open up doors to help the senior citizens more in our own community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay?
I'm unclear why we're extending the jurisdiction of the Gary Human Relations Commission outside of the city of Gary. Why are we doing that? In other words, it sounds as if a person could file charges from Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, East Chicago, from anywhere, possibly even out of state. Why are they asking for that authority?
So I can answer that, Councilman Lay. Well, first, we are not, so there's a little bit of, seems to maybe a little bit of confusion. There are some cities who don't have human relations commissions. And so what I'm actually doing, what the commission is doing is we're looking ahead. So then if the EEOC or HUD decide for whatever reason within their jurisdiction, their rules or regulations to give us a case because perhaps maybe a city doesn't have a human relations commission, then we could, with respect to what's in our ordinance, take that case. Now, we haven't had a situation like that ever occur. But not saying it won't ever occur. So we've just opened up ourselves to that. We're not taking over cities that already have the Human Relations Commission and certainly not interrupting what they already do. We're just saying that we could if possible. Now, with respect to age, we did need to expand because we were taking age cases and we were transferring those cases back to the EEOC, which when we could investigate them ourselves. So we're able to keep those age cases as well as open ourselves up to the possibility of being able to act as, a human relations commission. We know that we can't step over any toes of cities who already have, step on any toes of cities that already have human relations commissions. But any case at all can be transferred to us from the EEOC or HUD. Like I said, within the jurisdictional rules and the rules and regulations. They're not going to give us a case anyway if it's already in the hands of another city and being handled by another city.
Mr. President, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going to just assume what I said was confusing. I was not at all referring to age. In other words, I see no reason at this time. I'm talking about the geographical jurisdiction of the Gary Human Relations Commission. I see no reason to do it until it is necessary. Here we're about to do something and say that anywhere, I guess, anywhere that they don't have a Human Relations Commission could be sent to Gary. I think we have enough to try to fulfill our our obligations to the city residents, to our city, as opposed to trying to resolve problems elsewhere. Again, as they transfer these, although it's never been done, I would assume they would also transfer money, funds with them. In other words, if we're now going to extend our Gary Human Relations Commission to work for other communities. So I would suggest that portion that deals with the physical geographical jurisdiction being extended, I think it should be stricken from this ordinance at this time. There's no reason to do it.
Councilman.
Let me just ask a question, I think that's connected with his, and excuse my ignorance, I don't know much about this area of civil rights law. But when you talk about the EEOC sending cases to us, would it be their practice to send cases that are outside of, that are not, arising out of the city of Gary?
Right. So as I stated, that is not a practice that the EEOC or the Department of HUD don't transfer cases.
You're frozen.
To us normally that, are from other jurisdictions. Okay. Am I okay now?
You are. So you might want to restate your last sentence.
Okay. I apologize. No, what I'm saying here is that the EEOC and the Department of Housing and Urban Development do not transfer cases to us that aren't arising out of Gary. What I'm simply saying here is that there are cities that do not have human relations commissions. And so if it should ever open up as a possibility for the city of Gary to receive cases that are nearby, and like I said, it's within the jurisdiction, rules, and regulations of the EEOC and Department of HUD, which, as we know, they change all the time. For example, the Department of Housing and Urban Development just added the LGBTQ+ community as a protected class. The Gary Human Relations Commission was ahead at making that amendment to our ordinance. So we actually were prepared because we had made that amendment way before HUD even did it. And so we were able to still, protect these individuals. So what we're doing right now is we're just looking ahead, with respect to what has happened in the pandemic. What we're seeing is a rise in cases, all over Indiana. And so we just want to be prepared as a Human Relations Commission to oversee any cases that the EEOC may change their rules and regulations, because they can do that at any time. And we just want to make ourselves open, leave ourselves as we want to have the ability to be able to take these cases. We don't want to close ourselves off because, as you mentioned, Councilman Lay, these cases and the case processing is where we receive our funding.
Yeah, but you're confusing what I'm saying. I'm not talking about age and the rest of them. That is that's what you're looking at. I'm talking about let's assume the city of Fort Wayne does not have a Human Relations Commission, or East Chicago or Hammond. I'm suggesting, okay.
All of those cities that you mentioned do, and so they would
not.
It's
the time here. Pick a city that don't have it. You tell me a city that don't have it currently. Give me the name of a city in Indiana.
Well, I don't have that list in front of me right now. But
let me guess then. Let me just guess.
Excuse me, Councilman Lay. There's about 12 different cities that do not have a Human Relations Commission in Indiana. And so if you'll excuse me, sir, I just have to correct you because I do have a list. It is not in front of me at this time. And so I don't want to give you the name of a city and then we look back later and it's not one of the cities. But
I'm going to give you one. I'm just going to give you one. In other, I'm using an example for the council, not for you. No, it's not for you now. What I'm about to say is for the Gary City Council. At this point, it's only 8 people that I'm speaking to. What I'm suggesting is, since if these cities, a city, and let's say it's Gary, Fort Wayne, let's make it a city. I'm suggesting that we should not be doing any work for them at this time. Should something in the future be transferred from this jurisdiction to physical jurisdiction, then I would suggest we then do an ordinance to do it. I do not believe we should set up an ordinance to anticipate something that may or may not happen. That is just creating laws that we don't currently need. And that's what I'm suggesting. It has nothing to do with age, gay rights, or anything of that nature.
Can I ask a question? So what was the rationale for adding the geographical jurisdiction language to the ordinance? So what is this tied to? What's the goal behind it?
If I could, Mr. President, just very briefly, and I completely understand Councilman Lay's point. One thing I would like to point out that, so for example, when the city of Gary, when you have an individual that files in what would be considered an EEOC complaint or a claim of discrimination that's an employee of the city of Gary, that's not handled by the Gary Human Relations Commission. That's handled by the EEOC out of Indianapolis or the EEOC out of Chicago. There's essentially a conflict. So what it allows is for the city to become one of the, in addition to handling some of these places that are not included, it allows those communities to send, as Councilman Lay had stated, send those complaints to be handled by the Gary Human Relations Commissions. Now, the Gary Human Relations Commission, with the leader under the leadership of Ms. Kalik, feels as if they have the capacity to handle those cases. And in addition to that, though, they receive funds based on the number of cases that they handle. So they have I think the idea is they believe they have the capacity to, that they see an opportunity to essentially grow the office because they believe they have a very, very good office. And I think they work well with a lot of the other communities that do have offices. So I think they look at it as an opportunity in order to see that, that office expand.
Let me just follow. Thank you. That's very helpful. So we get money per case that we handle, right? So there's a financial incentive to take on more cases so that the office can basically be more fully funded. I mean, there's more funding that would come in. That's correct, right? Okay. And secondly, the notion is, from what I hear, we're being a good neighbor, right? We're kind of, as other cities may have to send stuff different places, then we will also be able to receive things. Is that what we're saying? And lastly, do you have the ability to say, we've reached our capacity, we can't handle this particular one? Is there a bypass ability where you can simply not take one that the EEOC or some other entity sends your way?
Well, certainly, for the past 50 so years, the Gary Human Relations Commission has been taking as many cases in as it can, and we have never reached a point in which we couldn't. We've been taking in so many cases that we, have reached capacity. Investigators can handle several cases at a time, and so. But if the communication bounces back and forth between me and my investigators, that they're becoming overwhelmed, certainly that we would be able to, discuss what capacity, we've reached. But at this point, that has never happened. So, I'm confident that the agency is in a place to consume as many cases as possible. And we want as many cases as possible because we know that we are desperately needed in the community, and residents, many of them cannot afford to have private attorneys. So this is where the EEOC comes in and HUD comes in to provide that service
Mr. President,
as much as possible.
All right, thank you. Councilman Lay?
in light of what Mr. Poe said and you restated, there are dollars associated with expanding the physical jurisdiction. I don't have a problem with that as long as Gary residents are given priority. I don't have a problem. So again, if that's what's going to be done, in other words, Gary residents cases will come first. In terms of what's going on with the human, I don't have a problem with it. The money changes. In fact, somebody is going to pay our Gary Human Relations, so they don't have to come back to the council and say we need, or to the executive branch that we need more money to carry out our responsibility. So I don't have any problem. I would withdraw any objection I have.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other questions? All right. Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2021-24 passes and is so ordered.
CPO 2021-25, an ordinance amending Title 15 entitled Land Usage, Chapter 123 entitled Zoning Code of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Gary, Indiana. Petition Danae Evans, 3901 to 39 West 11th Avenue, Gary, Indiana. Property at 3901 through 39 West 11th Avenue, Gary, Indiana.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer.
I move for passage of CPO 2021-25 on third and final.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Brewer and seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. We'll have the overview at this time. Mr. Berea.
Good evening. The owner petitioner is Donnell Evans. The affected real estate is 3901-39 West 11th Avenue. And the petitioner is requesting a use variance to operate an automotive dependent and related retail service establishment. The 5 criteria for a use variance are in your packet and on the screen. Staff provided a favorable recommendation for this position. The BZA also provided a favorable recommendation for this petition with the condition that after 1 year to inspect and ensure that no cars are affecting are parked illegally or affecting the neighboring properties, which was one of the complaints that was made by neighbors for previous owners, and the petitioner, the proposed operator of the new business, agreed to that. The GIS overview, aerial view of the site is as follows. This is a facility that was currently operating as automotive service. As you can see here is Whitcomb Auto Service. And the zoning, however, was never properly zoned for such a use. It was residentially zoned. So this petition would bring the current and proposed use into the appropriate zoning category. That concludes staff overview at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Berea. Questions, discussion from council members?
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay.
I'd yield if somebody else was trying to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Lay. It's Councilman Weatherspoon. Mr. Berea, did you mention that that business has never been, that area has never been zoned for that type of business? Is that what you stated? It has never?
That is correct. It was residential. It is residential, and it was operating as a as automotive service.
You know, that's interesting. In prior years, prior to that gentleman moving in that business, that was known as McKinney's Auto Sale. And, you know, Mr. McKinney, of course, had taught at the Gary Career Center for many years and owned that business since, I want to say, probably about 1974. And during that time period, all the way up until he sold it to this gentleman, it was never zoned.
Yeah, I have no records of the zoning being changed from residential as it was on the historical maps to the maps we have currently. I have no records of that.
I just find it astounding. I just found that astounding because I have a personal relationship with the people that own that business for years. As a matter of fact, they were family members, and I just find that absolutely astounding.
If I may, Mr. President, just comment just briefly. If I may, Councilman Weatherspoon, it's entirely possible that that property existed, the structure existed prior to the passage of what was ultimately the zoning map, and it would have been grandfathered as a existing non-conforming use. So although it was never granted that the actual zoning for it, the use would have been allowed and continued to be allowed until it's ceased to be used as such. And we have a lot of buildings that are like that. We have a lot of legacy properties that the zoning doesn't necessarily comport, and they've never sought a rezone or something of that nature, or the property has remained vacant for a long time, but it originally was a particular use. Well, once it stops being used as such, then all of a sudden that stops, that expires, that non-conforming use status expires.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lay?
Yeah, my question goes to Mr. Poe. Now, so you're saying it was never done, but it was grandfathered in. I understand that, with non-conform, and that it changes because of change of ownership? Isn't it that has the variance?
Not necessarily change of ownership. What our ordinance state is that if it ceases to be used in the non-conforming status, the non-conforming allowed use, then for a year or so, I think there's a specific period. It's either 6 months or a year that's in our actual statute. Then that non-conforming allowable use ceases. And I can't recall the section right off the top of my head. I don't know. Mr. Boer, are you familiar with the discontinuation section? I know it's titled discontinuation, but I know that that's essentially the statute or the ordinance that basically regulates that.
Right. I was talking, is it a discontinuation by the previous owner, or is it just that now the property, or is it the property itself goes back?
The property itself, the use that's allowed on that is, regardless of the ownership, is it ceases. So by the way that the ordinance is written, it states, if the use ceases for 6 months or whatever, and typically how we've kind of figured that out when that issue has come up from time to time is whether or not they've continued to get a business license for that use on a yearly basis, whether or not they could demonstrate that they remained in continuous use, if a business license wasn't required or something of that nature. So it's really a case-by-case basis that that's ultimately decided on.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Poe.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other questions from council members? This is a 3rd district, right?
Yes.
Did you have any concerns, questions, Councilman Brown?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. If there's no other questions, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2021-25 passes and is so ordered.
President,
Councilman Brewer?
just something for us to consider. On these ones that we're talking about reviews and coming back, I would like to just make a recommendation that we keep a copy of these in a file inside the council office, so that way we're staying on top of these, that we look to have them to come back or consider them to come back, where a council member may have an issue on something, or maybe the administration may have need or want to know, we can have something internal that we can just reach to and share on both ends. Thank you.
Thank you.
CPO 2021-26, an ordinance amending Title 15 entitled Land Usage, Chapter 123 entitled Zoning Code of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Gary, Indiana. Petitioner Sergio Perez, 4932 through 42 Broadway, Gary, Indiana. Property at 4932 through 42 Broadway, Gary, Indiana.
Councilman Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for passage of CPO 2021-26 on third and final.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Brewer and seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. We'll have the overview at this time. Mr. Berea.
Good evening. The owner petitioner is Sergio Perez. The affected real estate 42 Broadway. This petitioner is requesting a special use permit to operate the business as automotive dependent and related retail and service establishment. Given that it's a special use request, we have the 7 criteria as stated. Staff provided a favorable recommendation for this petition. The BZA also provided a favorable recommendation for this petition, also with the condition that there's no undue influence upon neighbors. So a 1-year evaluation as such. The property is right here, the aerial view along Broadway. The street view shows checkered flag imports, which would be the use. This is zoned B31, so automotive related retail and service is permitted by special use, as previously discussed. That concludes the staff overview at this time. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Berea. Any questions, discussion from council members?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman, I'll yield to Councilman Williams first as the district person, and then Councilman Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had a moment to speak to Mr. Perez. He is in agreement with everything that the council wants. He has actually went into the neighborhood and did some cleanup and repair to the fence of some of the neighbors. So I would like to see him get an opportunity to establish his business.
Thank you, Councilman Williams. Councilman Brewer. You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. I was just wondering, was the petitioner, was he the previous owner or the renter across the street, and now he's over on the west side of the Broadway?
That is correct.
Okay. So only thing I'm glad to see that we do have a review put in place, and I will hope that we won't have problems like we had across the street with this business here. But I am in favor for it. But I can tell you, I'll personally be watching this myself. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion from council members? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2021-26 passes and is so ordered. If you could restate CPO 2021-16, Madam Clerk.
CPL 2021-16, an ordinance for the City of Gary, Lake County, Indiana, authorizing additional appropriations for the Park and Recreation Fund, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Arlene Colvin, acting City Controller.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Sure. Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2021-16.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Councilwoman Brown. will have the overview at this time. Mr.
Councilman, if I could, I did speak to Attorney Colvin. She had stated that she was hoping she was going to get 10 days notice for this particular ordinance, because this would require notice for a public hearing on the actual appropriation, and I don't believe that notice went out.
For 16?
I'm sorry, is this the Parks one, or is this the fire?
This
Yes.
the Parks one.
I believe that was my understanding from Attorney Colvin.
Oh, I didn't write that down.
Well, I do
I thought it
recall
was the other
that, but
one.
is it our responsibility to put out the public notice? Is that what we're saying?
No, what she had asked was that she would be given 10 days notice that it would be coming up for if it was actually going to be heard at this meeting. She needed the 10 days notice to advertise for the public hearing. Yeah.
So is it your intention to delay this to the next council meeting? And I guess you would then immediately be able to do the public notice?
Yeah, that would be our intention. But yeah, at this point right now, I don't believe the action can be taken until that notice is provided.
Okay. So,
Mr. Poe, I'm sorry, President.
Councilwoman Atkins?
Mr. Poe, does the notice have to be done because of the sale of the property?
I'm not sure. I'm just relaying the information that Attorney Colvin had provided me. I really don't have a whole lot of insight into this ordinance.
I apologize, council members. For some reason, I thought the 10-day notice was required for the one that we deferred, which was 2021-19.
Well, I don't think that would be on you. It would be on her, on the executive branch, to put out. They're the ones bringing the ordinance to us.
Okay.
So unless we're told otherwise, or the clerk's office is told otherwise, it's going to appear on our agenda for the next, regularly scheduled meeting, which is why it's here tonight. So I think that maybe there was a miscommunication with the clerk's office or a misunderstanding about when it would reappear. But it would seem we would basically entertain a motion to defer this ordinance to the next council meeting.
Mr. President, prior to that, since
Councilman
it's,
Lay?
I'd like to comment. Yes, we have to have this public hearing. What my problem is, we're constantly, as a council, talking about repairs being done in various parks. As I understand, there's repairs needed to be done in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 5th. It could be something in the others at the same time. I don't believe when this money is being appropriated, there should be some discussion that we at least do some repairs. As I understand, and please forgive me, that Mr. Reeves is saying that, I can't remember the word he uses, but I think it's being used improperly, that somehow he has a deficit that he has to make up. That would be against the law to have a deficit. I think it's just somehow they want to appropriate all of the money, but they only want to spend part of the money. I would suggest within the 10 days or whatever, there's some discussion about if we need to repairs to these roofs, since these roofs are part of the park.
Yes.
That the 2nd, 3rd, and the 5th, those are the ones I've heard about.
Yeah, I've been communicating about the 4th District Parks for since January.
So we've had individual action. That's great too.
In the public.
So what about you in the 1st District? You want to build a park, or your park's okay out there?
His park is fine. He has his own budget for his park.
No, that's
Marquette.
That's one particular park. I know the Glen Ryan Pavilion, as well as
okay.
A couple.
Well, I think we should at least have a discussion with somebody concerning the money. As I understand, 90,000 of this.
Oh yeah, we run it.
He's calling it a deficit. Well, they once tried to build canals in the state of Indiana. It's a violation of the law to have a deficit. You may find it in an area where you're not paying NIPSCO or somebody else, but other than that, you you can't have a deficit, or you shouldn't have it. So that money may be available to do something with, I guess now, the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth part. But I'm going to later on, I'm going to have another suggestion. But this, we certainly should look at this money.
I agree, Mr. President.
That's why I did it, Councilwoman Brown, because you would agree with me.
Mr. President,
All right, Councilman Brewer, then Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Mr. President, I request that who's ever in charge, Mr. Reeves or whoever's in charge of parks, come with a plan before us about what they're going to do with all parts. What is the overall plan, and bring dollars with it. Those plans, because we don't just want to hear a conversation about what we may do or what we're trying to do. We want to hear a strategic plan that what we're going to do for our park, for us, the mowing schedules, if there's leaking roofs, if there's playground equipment that's out there that's not working or need what type of maintenance. We want to know what we're going to do far as our parks. Other than that, I do not plan on supporting this. These dollars are coming from another area, and we're taking these dollars to one particular area that does have a non-reverting fund that's sitting there. So if I don't receive a plan on the parks, I would not support this. And that's not just a plan. That's a plan with dollars attached to that plan also. Thank you, Mr. President.
And the word when.
Thank you.
That'll be at, let's make that clear. Thanks, Councilman Lay. May 4th, 6 p.m.
so this is going back
Okay,
to
wait a minute.
committee.
Okay, Councilman Barnes Caldwell.
This is going back to committee for May the,
Well, I think the motion might be, well, you can send it back to committee, I suppose, next week, and then the public hearing on May 4th.
I would like to send it back to committee because there are some things in the park at the 3rd District that need work. So I'd like to send it back to committee.
second.
Okay, so first we need to have this is Councilwoman Atkins. Are so we have we're in the middle of a vote to move for passage. Okay, so
Councilwoman.
Councilwoman Atkins.
What are we doing? What do you want me to do?
So
I had the motion to pass. It was second, and then a whole.
Can you withdraw?
So we need to withdraw.
All right.
Withdraw.
So I withdraw my motion.
Move to withdraw.
Yeah, I move to withdraw the motion to pass CPO 2021-16 again.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Atkins and seconded by Councilman Barnes Caldwell. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. President, let me just
Councilman Brewer.
make a note, since it had been brought to us by Mr. Poe, that we make sure we give the director of finance notice to make sure they publicize it when we do take it on third and final. So let's keep that in mind also. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions or discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, the move to pass CPO 2021-16 is withdrawn. Now, Councilwoman Atkins, would you like to make a motion to basically send this to the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee?
No, because it was in Ways and Means.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Ways and Means Committee.
Give me a second. Let me think. So we had set a Ways and Means Committee meeting for May the 11th. But I am going to reschedule that meeting. So I will make a motion to refer CPO 2021-16 to a Ways and Means Committee meeting that will be scheduled for May the 18th at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. I guess the only,
Oh, wait, it can't be the 18th because
that's
that is
a-
our council meeting.
right.
So it'll have to be on the 20th. So I'm sorry, I will state that.
Let me just ask if I might, the administration, because if we're talking about a plan for parks, if we have the meeting that late, it would be June before we voted on it, probably, or maybe the last meeting in May. So I don't know how that's going to affect funding and the timing of for summer. But I don't know, Mr. If it's okay, if we want to hear from Mr. Pohl or
Mr. President, if I could speak first and then Mr. Pohl.
Sure, absolutely.
So during our committee meeting last week, the Ways and Means Committee meeting turned into a Parks meeting as we were discussing this particular ordinance. And so on that call, Mr. Reese was there. I'm sorry.
Mr. President.
Mr.
Councilman Brewer.
So if Mr. Reed is not able to attend, I thought he was working on someone that he was training. It's been over a year now that this person he's been working to train. We are really, if we're talking about in May, we are definitely at the season where the parks are supposed to open up. And that definitely puts us behind, because if the council is going to take action on it after our second meeting in May, we won't even be able to take any action till June.
No, I agree. That's why I've been asking since yesterday.
Okay.
You know, however, I mean, I won't be here in May too. That's why I wanted to have this meeting in February on the 23rd, right? To understand what the plan was. So yes, there is someone that he was training. I don't think that they've officially filled the director of parks position. And I'm not speaking on, I'm just telling you all what I know, because I did follow up what I said I was going to do last week and have been talking to them directly. So I can't, I mean, Mr. Reed is not on the call right now, but this was just yesterday, day before yesterday, that I got that update from them in terms of what they're trying to do. So they don't have the information that the council was looking for, and I don't think they'll have it within the next 2 weeks.
I think this I think it puts the city in a bad situation that there's no definitive plan that's in place.
I agree.
We actually had a whole year to sit back and work. A lot of us sit at home during that time. That we should have a plan together. We shouldn't wait till, and I hate the same argument with the snow in September, you know, and things of this nature. Then we get hit off guard with the snow because we still wasn't prepared. And here we are now, it's snowing today, but the sun is going to shine by the end of the week, okay? And we don't have a definitive plan together, what we're going to do with the parks. And I'm not talking about all 50 plus parks. I'm talking about 6 parks. 6. I know others want more parks in their district, but I'm asking to give one good park in every district where you can look at it, it's well manicured, there's no potholes in the parking lot, there's no sidewalks, it's crumbling, you can't walk on the sidewalk. A decent park in every district, that's all I'm asking, just sit at a 50 plus. My thing is, you get a director there. I don't know what the reason was that the previous director got removed, but we shouldn't be removing people if they haven't done something really crazy. If you don't have someone ready to take that position, the parks is such a serious position. It's very important to our community that we don't have decent parks. We probably have the only community here discussing something of this nature here, where every other community already has their plan together, how they're going to open their parks up come Labor Day, Memorial Day weekend. I'm very disappointed.
Councilman Lay.
Yeah, apparently what I said is somewhat misunderstood. Councilman Brewer took it, and I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying. He took it to a much bigger level than I was discussing. It's $165,000, as I understand. They have not decided exactly what they're going to do with 90,000 of that. As I understand, Mr. Reeves says he has a deficit, and I'm saying he can't have a deficit. He may have some kind of bill over there he wants to pay. I have no idea what it is. The 90,000 is what I was saying that we should look at. In other words, if they appropriate the money, and I think we probably somehow got to let them to go ahead and do that, that 90,000 we would now it seems to be 6 parks. That's fine. I don't have a problem with the number. That money would be appropriated to be used by these 6 parks. That's all I'm saying. The rest of it, whatever they were going to buy, lawnmowers or whatever they were going to do, whatever they were going to do with the money, I don't disagree with that. Because I also understand community development it somehow may come up with some money. And I also believe, and I was going to mention it later, but I will say it now, that this 41.5 million coming in as culvert money, it's unclear to me exactly what we can do with that at this point. That could be another source. And the park specifically I was really concerned with was the one in the 3rd district, because they got a swimming pool and all of that. And when I was on the council, I know I think we put $2 million into that park.
Yes.
So if we got, I don't know how many parks have swimming pool, active swimming pools, but that certainly would be, that pool over there, if put in order, could be used by the citizens of Gary. So
Roosevelt has an active pool.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Roosevelt has an active pool. And right now, I'm just sitting here thinking, everybody knew that this TPO 2021-16 was on the agenda for tonight, correct? Yet the people who were supposed to be here to talk about it, they're not here. This is that disrespect again. If you knew you weren't going to talk about it and you weren't prepared, you should have sent me an email earlier today. Did you get one?
President? I did not.
Ways and Means Chair?
No, ma'am.
Okay, all right. But yeah, you don't show up for the meeting when it's your turn. And then, okay, I'm gonna stop.
Well,
Councilwoman Brown.
well, I agree. Okay. I have said as little as possible about the park, well, as actually 2 parks in the 3rd district. I've said as little as possible, and we've done nothing, absolutely nothing. And I am thoroughly disgusted. And so if that money that we have got coming, I expect some of that money to go to the 3rd district. Look at, I mean, you can do all these wonderful things for the park in the 1st district, but you can do nothing. And you have residents in the 1st district as well.
well, I think Mr. President.
Councilman Lay.
Yeah, I think your discussions have been with the wrong person. I believe the discussion should go up as opposed to down. I consider Mr. Reeves going down. Whatever we wanted to do with these parks, certainly I think that should be directed absolutely towards Mayor Prince. Tell him.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we keep fumbling with, if you keep fumbling with where you are, and I think Mr. Brewer and I had a discussion about that. Mr. Reeves does not have the authority to do, and I sat through that other park meeting, for the lack of a better term. Yeah. And all he was committing to and praising people, I thought it was just blowing smoke. That certainly if we want it done, we tell the mayor. That's where it goes. It goes directly to the mayor. That's how we want this. Is that 90,000? It's unclear to me how he uses the term. He has a deficit. He can't spend more money than he had or that we have appropriated. So I believe it's a misuse of a term again.
So is our plan to send this to committee where we can have a more thorough discussion of it, and then we can take action then? I do recognize the initial point I raised is that May 24th will be very late. And so the summer season will have already been well underway before we have taken action on it, unless we have a special meeting. We'll be way after Memorial Day. And then I guess they'd have to, unless they can't order it, I guess they can't, until we've appropriated it. So I just want to make sure that the administration is clear on that's what will have to happen.
I think we should have a special meeting if that becomes necessary.
I agree.
Okay.
So they can, whatever they buying, lawnmowers or whatever they're trying to buy over there. But I understand they're trying to buy some kind of beach equipment. I believe Mr. Brewer advised me of that. I'm not sure.
So I'm just going to ask, I've been criticized for they say our meetings are.
Or at least it's in writing, our request. And then if the council is in agreement with it, we can have at least the committee meeting next week to try to answer any questions related to it. And if we need to have a special meeting to pass it, if they need to use, have it already appropriated to buy the ATVs and to do the maintenance on the equipment or whatever else. I think that will be our next actions.
Okay, so Councilwoman Atkins, are you suggesting that we would have the committee meeting next week? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, so what day next week?
Well, Mr. President,
Councilwoman.
I don't think we're going to be ready next week. I don't think we're going to be ready next week. We talked about ATVs and other kinds of equipment for Marquette Park, but we haven't talked about anything for the other parks. And so I'm not prepared to have a meeting next week. I'm not prepared. So I'm like, Brewer, I'm not going to vote for this. My vote is absolutely going to be no.
Well,
Okay, Councilman Brewer.
Well, Councilman Brown, the issue is if we don't try to do a meeting next week, we run a risk of not getting anything passed or anything heard in probably till June. I'm talking about the vote on dollars. So that's why we're trying to have a meeting early to have a conversation at this time. And
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You done, Councilman Brewer?
Well, one thing I was going to say was about the whole dollar figure. I believe it's 177,000. 166. Okay, 166. The math is off. They quoted that they wanted 5 ATVs with $20,000+. That hit you at 100,000. Then they said they had 90,000 that they needed to put in this reserve because they were running this so-called deficit here. So the dollars don't add up. And then there was another piece of equipment they come up buying too. We don't even know where the rest of the dollars is going to come from. So there's a problem with this all by itself. So that's the only point I want to bring up to the council when we do have discussion. Let's make sure that the math is adding up with the dollars that we're talking about spending.
All right, thank you. Attorney Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Councilwoman Atkins. To fulfill the notice requirement, I would suggest that you set a date. Even if you don't have the information by that date, you can always cancel that meeting. But without setting a date, the city will not be able to intelligently inform the public as to the meeting, and they have to satisfy that 10-day notice requirement. That has to be done.
Great, thank you, Attorney Williams. So there's a motion to at least have the conversation. I don't think we will necessarily come to every conclusion at the committee meeting, but if possible, we would vote on the matter May 4th. So that would be 2 weeks from today. But we would have a week to kind of prepare for any discussions and questions related to the dollars. And then, of course, another week to get any questions answered prior to actually taking a vote on May 4th. So we do need to, keep this moving along because it is time sensitive. So there's a motion, and I believe there was a second to send this to the Ways and Means Committee meeting. Is that correct, Councilwoman Atkins?
It was, but I need to revise the date at this point.
So then restate your motion.
Okay, so Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to send CPO 2021-16 back to the Ways and Means Committee with a committee meeting set for Thursday, April the 29th at 5 p.m. via Zoom.
Okay, is there a second? It's been moved by Councilwoman Atkins, seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Any new questions or discussion?
Can I get the date and time again for that meeting?
Thursday, April 29th at 5:00 p.m. Any other new questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
No.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 7 yes, 1 no.
With 7 votes in the affirmative, CPO 2021-16 is moved back to the Ways and Means Committee with a meeting on Thursday, April 29th at 5:00 p.m. via Zoom.
Mr. President, I didn't want to interrupt. You have to recite what the clerk says, like it's 7-1. If you just cite the 7 by itself, what happened to the other 2?
Is Attorney Williams, am I breaking a rule of this body?
I deem that a technicality. I think you're only required to report out whether it passes or fails. But I don't see any harm in doing that. I don't think it's a necessity, however.
All right, thank you. I think that ends our pending ordinances and resolutions on third and final. Councilman Brewer?
We make sure that we're acknowledging that there will be a public hearing on the 4th for the record. So everyone is clear that we are pushing for a public hearing on the 4th of May at 6 p.m.
Yes, as stated, there will be a public hearing following the Thursday, April 29th committee meeting for May 4th, 6:00 p.m. at a regular common council meeting. And it's important, I guess the administration is going to be the one that will get out this notice. So we want to make sure that you all communicate with, I guess, Attorney Colvin or Mr. Harper, our new controller, to ensure that it's done properly so we don't run into this issue at our next council meeting. All right. Council pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
CPO 2021-27, an ordinance authorizing a transfer of funds within the fire department to cover fleet insurance and authorizing additional appropriations for Fire Department Fund 224, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Malik L. Harper, City Controller.
Councilwoman Atkins. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2021-27 on second reading with a Ways and Means Committee hearing set for Thursday, May 13th at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom, and a public hearing set for Tuesday, May 18th at 6 p.m. via Zoom.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Atkins, seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8 yes, 0 no's.
With 8 votes in the affirmative, CPO 2021-27 passes and passes on second reading with a Ways and Means Committee meeting to be held on May 13th at 5:00 p.m. and a public hearing on May 18th at 6:00 p.m. via Zoom.
Mr. President, is pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we'll have our mayor's report, Attorney McCain.
Good evening, Mr. President. Thank you very kindly. I bring you greetings on behalf of Mayor Jerome A. Prince. The mayor's report will be very brief today. I just want to remind all of our residents to take full advantage of the mass vaccination site at Roosevelt High School. The vaccination site is open to anyone from the hours of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday through 7 days a week, from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Even if you have not registered, even though registration is preferred, you will be welcome to receive the vaccination. You will have to be directed to a different area where they will register you on site. Or if you are not in a vehicle, if you are a pedestrian or someone using public transportation, there is a separate vaccination site for those individuals. We encourage all the members of the community who have not been vaccinated to do it. There is absolutely no excuse. There are several ride-sharing opportunities for people where Lyft and Uber will pay for your ride. Also, public transportation, if you let them know that you are going to the mass vaccination site. The State Department of Public Health, in conjunction and partnership with the Gary Health Department, had a mobile clinic set up this weekend at the flea market on 41st and Cleveland. And that was, I believe, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The State Department of Health is making sure that we go out into the community and invite people to get the vaccine at Roosevelt, but also meet those individuals in the community where they are. So we applaud their efforts. The vaccination site has been open for 2 weeks. The last set of numbers that I received, and these are not up to date, but about 2 weeks ago, 47% of the people registering to get the vaccination at the Roosevelt site are Illinois residents. We need to take full advantage of this being right here in our front yard at Roosevelt High School. So I'm encouraging our faith leaders, our civic leaders, to truly evangelize the importance of getting this vaccine and making sure that Gary residents are taking advantage of this free service. There are 6 weeks remaining in this campaign. So let's push for the finish line and make sure that at the conclusion of this 8 weeks, we cannot say that the large majority of our city has been fully vaccinated. This is the time to do it, because if you are getting the Pfizer shot, you get it now, and you will have the opportunity to get the second dose in 3 weeks. So this is a critical time to take advantage of this unprecedented opportunity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Attorney McCain. Questions for Attorney McCain or other members of the administration?
Mr. President.
I think Councilman Brewer was first and then Councilman Lay.
I'll let Mr. Lay go.
Yeah, my question is going to go back to something that really needs to be straightened out. Until you announce the vote, that is when it is officially in our records. So if the vote is 5, 3, and 1, for you to say 5 and forget the 3 and the 1 is a disservice also to your counsel. So all you doing is restate what the clerk says. That makes it official when you take it and put it in our minutes. So, I mean, that's crystal clear. I mean, that's elementary. Go back and look over any period of time. You will find that people restate what the clerk says, because it's our clerk. The other question that I have, what is occurring is what I thought would occur. And that's what I had a problem with the Human Relations Commission. We seem to be servicing people outside of Gary. Outside of Gary, when you said 47%, that might as well say it's 50-50. That somehow we have to ensure that the people in Gary are certainly being vaccinated. At the end, maybe we do everybody in Chicago, and we still have the same problem here. The other matter I wanted to ask the deputy mayor about, one of the things that we have not discussed, and I don't know if this, Mr. President, correct me if it's more of a statement than a question, but my question would go to this $83 million. We have had relatively little or no discussion about this 83 million. I'm aware that the first portion that comes in is 41 and a half. I'm not sure whether we have to encumber it or whether we have to spend it, but it would seem to me one of the things that I had thought about is that the council itself, again, in any area they have a concern that they could make up a wish list. It's unclear to me at this point what the 83 million or the 41 and a half can be used for. In other words, I think that should be part of a mayor's report. We will get the money, as I understand it, in May. I guess the 41 and a half million comes in here that this council will have to appropriate. At this point, it's unclear, certainly to me, maybe others know more since maybe more skillful, what the money can be used for. I do know that I was told that we certainly could probably give some kind of stipends to the police and firemen at 3% they were at. It wouldn't be a salary, it'd be a stipend. I would have no problem doing that. But I would hope that that we get some kind of report very quickly from the executive branch about this money. This is more money, I believe, than the city of Gary has ever had. I know it's most money we've ever had at one point. And we're going to have to appropriate. As I understand, we have to spend the first 41 and a half. One of the things I think should be done is that the council, and I did discuss this with several of the council people, as well as Mr. Brewer, that we put together a wish list that if it can be done within that 41 and a half million, that should also be given priority, since we will have to appropriate all the money, as opposed to the money arriving here and nothing is done with it. So I'd like to see that as part of the mayor's report, the restrictions or requirements on this 41 and a half million, or the 83 million, I guess, is the whole amount. Because I believe there's another thing. If it's something we want to do, it seems to be where it's unclear, we could certainly ask the government for a waiver if we want to do something. Let them tell us we absolutely cannot do it. Because I think they just passed the bill myself. I don't think a lot of thought was given to it.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Attorney McCain.
I can respond and shed a little light on Councilman Lay's question. The councilman is correct. We will receive our first installment of $41.5 million or thereabouts on May 10th of this year. And the second installment will be received in March of 2022. What the administration has been working on so far is putting together a spending proposal for the council to consider. Once we got the spending proposal to a near final draft stage, we would present that to the council as a working group so that the council can make its own recommendations about how the money should be appropriated. I have identified, or I shouldn't say I, but the team has identified 4 general buckets in which appropriations can be assigned. The first is revenue recovery. It's probably the simplest to understand. We compare our 2019 revenues to our 2020 revenues, and we write ourselves a check for the difference, because that's the money that we did not earn compared to a prior year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The second bucket is the payments to essential employees that Councilman Lay described for our police, fire, IT, general services, the people who have been working so hard to keep the city moving while we were on Zoom or doing things from home or other locations. These folks showed up to work every single day as essential employees, and this act allows for them to be compensated and awarded for that. Number 3 is individuals, households, hard-hit industries, and small businesses that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We are working with the Mayor's Business Advisory Council to make a recommendation to how to help those individuals with that impact of COVID-19. And the fourth, and probably the largest bucket, is infrastructure that will assist in sewer, water, and broadband. So that is a huge bucket because it costs the most. We are also looking very closely at each of these areas to see how the money can be spent. And I agree with you, Councilman Lay, that there may be an opportunity for us to ask for a waiver, but there's also a very wide opportunity for us to be imaginative and to be innovative and think of ways that we could fit into these buckets. So trust me in that we are working on that. We understand the time. May 10th is the first deposit that will be made, but of course, 1 penny cannot be spent until it is properly and legally appropriated. The suggestion that we would like to make, and this is early on, I didn't expect this question, but this is something that we're going to be talking with the leadership of the council about, is that once the money is present in our account, we'll need to talk seriously about scheduling either a special meeting or a series of meetings in order to accomplish the appropriation of this $41.5 million in the short term. We have not yet had that conversation, but I am introducing it to the council leadership today. We are considering our proposal to make to the leadership about doing that. We are certainly aware that we need to find a way to spend this money in due time, but we want to make sure that we present a comprehensive spending plan with the council's input that the council can consider and make an appropriation at that time. The last point I'll answer for you, Councilman Lay, is that the money has to be appropriated and we have to itemize how it was spent before we can receive the second installment in March of 22. But the money has to be spent, completely spent, drawn down to zero by December 31st, 2024.
Brewer, if you want to do it with 4, you certainly would not be violating the open door, and you can move forward and in terms of what the council desires or don't desire. So I don't think we have to wait to May 10th. We know the amount, and it's coming, and you certainly appear, Deputy Mayor, you certainly appear that you have made, or at least the administration has looked at it and made some decisions. So that can be given to the council, at least these 4 people, as soon as possible. And maybe that's done in a private meeting. I would also, I think such a meeting should also, in fact, the decision makers must be in the room. And what I mean by that, I believe the mayor should be a participant, so that whatever's decided on is not contradicted at some later point. And I think of the Trump administration. People say something, and 2 days later, Donald Trump says on Twitter, they took his account, that we're not going to do it that way. So again, I believe you certainly, and the mayor, or whoever the mayor would choose, but I think he himself should be present. Same way, it may be necessary for our attorney to be present to support the council. Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry it took so much time.
That's all right. Thank you, Councilman Lay. I think Attorney McCain was going to respond, and then Councilman Brewer.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I just wanted to say that we do intend to have these conversations prior to May 10th. We have had a meeting as early as this morning on this very topic. I was just giving the council a forecast that this is the communication that we expect to have with the leadership about our plan, as well as the implementation of that plan, and working with the council so that we can have a cooperative document. I do agree with you, Councilman Lay. I think if we can do the work ahead of time and come to some agreement about the plan, then it will be something that we could do on a consent agenda. But I just don't, we're not there yet, but we are working towards that end.
Thank you. And I guess what I think we were saying is that the plan itself that you're working on, I would hope that it is as collaborative as possible, because, it might be a perfect plan in your mind, but if there's not 5 other people who think so on the council, then we're going to end up in a back and forth. So I think before you go too far down the road in concocting your plan and the various buckets, it's important that we're involved as early as possible, because May 10th will be here very quickly. So, but thank you. Councilman Brewer?
And just to add that the mayor does have the pleasure of calling us all into executive session if he chooses to discuss this matter. Not per se the money, but just the planning and development overall for the city. But I do want to ask a question. I heard Councilwoman Caldwell talk about the closure of Grant Street. That's not so much my issue. My issue is the repairs that's been made to these roads. I spoke early on when administration first came in about 25th Avenue. That was a road that was just done pretty much. And if you look at that road now, it's a very cut up road, and it's a very patched up road. And it doesn't present itself as it did when we first paid all of that money to get the street resurfaced. So it does become a problem. I know we did not do any seal cracking last year, but because of the repairs that they have done, it's even more seal cracking that will have to be done, because it's just cut in so many different areas. And if anyone knows anything about asphalt, once you start making these cuts inside of asphalt, you weaken the surface altogether. So that becomes an issue. And I know paving is a very sensitive and a serious issue for us in this city because of the lack of dollars to do the paving. And also another question is, what is our plan for paving inside the city. I'll wait for a response for that question. I got one more for you after that, just one.
Well, thank you very much, Councilman Brewer. I will request that the Public Works Department do a review on 25th Avenue so that we can examine what you describe and report back to the council as to what we find.
Thank you.
With respect to the paving plan, the Board of Public Works just last Wednesday approved a $1.6 million contract to Milestone, I believe, the company who was awarded the contract to do the repaving in the city. I believe that Councilman Williams was present in the meeting with Ms. Barber. I am not sure, so if I'm speaking incorrectly, Councilman Williams, please correct me. But we have a list that has been prepared of all the streets that were evaluated. We didn't pick the streets that were evaluated and chosen for repaving based upon their condition of deterioration. And I'll make sure that everyone on the council has that list by tomorrow.
Thank you.
And my last final question, I'd like to applaud the administration on the way that they're handling catching illegal dumpers inside the city. That is something that my cleanup committee, basically, it was on our wish list that we would catch people and we would embarrass them. And I appreciate the embarrassment that this administration is doing towards that, because people have a lot of nerve to come into our city and do what they do, that they wouldn't do in other communities, and I do appreciate that. But I have an issue that I got several people that have called me, and it's neighborhoods that's doing well, and that a few people move in and bring neighborhoods down. There is a neighborhood on 13th and Clay. Yeah, 13th Clay and Etna there. It's almost like night and day. One half of the block is well manicured lawns, houses are well kept up. If you get to the end of the street, it looks like a jungle. Cars parked all over, all on the grass, 3 and 4 garbage cans at one residence, trailers everywhere, a number of things, illegal fireplace. I've been through there. Just received a call as I was sitting here on the council. If we can get code enforcement and along with your police department to come together, collaborate, that we go into that neighborhood there and do a strong presence, that we are serious about saving our communities and not dragging individuals away, because it bothered me so much that neighbors that I've been knowing for years in that neighborhood there is looking to just pick up and leave. And if anyone knows about the market in the Etna area, is trying to come back, but they're willing to take the loss to get away from what they're seeing now that they're not normally accustomed to. So if we can go through and show some strength and some teeth in that issue there, I think it'd be greatly appreciated by the residents of that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. President.
Mr. President,
I'm going to let Attorney McCain respond, and then we'll have Councilwoman Brown.
I just wanted to respond to Councilman Brewer. Thank you for recognizing the administration's efforts to call out these illegal dumpers. I will see to it that there is an operation done with the area at 13th and Clay so that we can address those issues.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Brown and then Councilman Williams.
Mr. President, I have a concern as it relates to code enforcement. You know, we say code enforcement, I'm really not sure exactly what we mean. I don't know if I don't know how much strength code enforcement has, you know, for a person to go onto somebody's property and and tell them what they should or should not be doing, or cite them, I don't know what kind of problems that creates. And so I don't know if we have any authority, if the police department, or I don't know about the police department, but the auxiliary police have any authority to help code enforcement, because it's difficult for those people to go onto someone's property and tell them what they should or should not be doing. And that's what I think.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to get some clarification on the situation. Several situations in the 6th District, our public schools are being dumped, and Adrian Note is helping us to clear that that debris away from those grounds. But it's a continuing problem, as well as with certain avenues within the 6th District. So my question is, are we going to utilize any of those dollars coming to us from COVID, get some cameras in place so that we can actually catch some more of these dollars?
Attorney McCain.
Yes, sir. Councilman Williams, we are looking at the full range of possibilities that we can use these dollars for. It is an extremely fluid situation. We receive multiple directives a week from the State Board of Accounts on how to account for these funds. We also receive information from the United States Department of Treasury, providing us with guidelines. There has been countless discussion with the United States Conference of Mayors, the the National League of Cities, all these organizations talking about, even locally, with our Accelerate Indiana municipalities in the state of Indiana. The discussion is ongoing as to how far we can cast our net with these dollars. The general direction that we have received thus far is that we can use this money for a lot of different things. But to answer your question about specifically about cameras to catch illegal dumpers, we're just not prepared to say that just yet. I just had a conversation this morning with a provider about shot spotting technology, and they told us that the ARPA funds, I'm sorry, I'm using the acronym, the American Rescue Plan Act funds can be used to subsidize that effort. We're also looking to see what other forms of law enforcement or what other technology can we invest in order to do that, to use these funds for. So it's fluid. I don't have an answer right now, but we are certainly looking at that, as well as surveillance throughout the city for crime suppression. If I could just also respond to, or ask Attorney Pohl to respond to Councilwoman Brown about code enforcement. We have our code enforcement section to help us cite those that are in violation of a city ordinance. If our code enforcement officers witness the commission of a crime, or they have probable cause to think that that is going on, then they can call for police assistance. If that person is possibly committing a misdemeanor, then they can ask for assistance. Attorney Pohl can describe that process in greater detail to you, Councilwoman Brown. We can do it now, or we can do it offline. The choice is yours.
We can do it offline. It's okay. It's just that it kind of bothers me. I look at some of the people on my street park their cars up on the, they park their cars on the sidewalk. And then if someone says something to them, what is code enforcement supposed to do with these people? And so that was my concern, and I didn't know how they were supposed to enforce those kinds of laws. I've got some on my street that do it,
We will have a conversation with you about that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Deputy
All
Mayor.
right, Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Thank you. Attorney McCain, I have two questions for you. I received a telephone call today from a couple of the employees from the Genesis Center. Their service packets. They haven't received them yet. The last follow-up I had with you, we passed that date. And my second question, does Marquette Park have a liquor license?
Okay, the answer to your first council meeting, or it may have been the one before that, is that this is the first time that the city has offered a severance package for a city employee. The first time in the knowledge of the law department, as well as Ms. Colvin, who has a great deal of experience with city government. Therefore, we are working from scratch, trying to develop this in an equitable way. I ask for your patience and the employees' patience. I believe 4 people were impacted. 1 person took a job inside the civil city. So those 3 individuals that are still waiting, I understand that. But once the severance package has been finalized, they will be paid for the amount of time that the severance package allows for. I am prepared to say that I will speak with the HR director as well as our city controller and our corporation counsel, and we will have an update for you, Councilwoman, by our next meeting on May 4th.
Okay. Now, does Marquette have a liquor license?
I don't know the answer to that question. My assumption is that they do under the park department, but I will need to confer with the park director and or the attorney for the park board, Judge Deidre Monroe.
Okay, so my next part to that question, once you find out the answer, I understand someone had an event there last week, a lobster and seafood night. And I was told by a few residents that their receipts reflected Madison Reese alcohol. So the drinks and the food came out of that. That's how their receipts read off of their credit cards. So if we have a liquor license at Marquette, why was she selling alcohol? Why does it come up under her business?
I will find out the answers to those questions for you.
Please, because I think that's kind of serious right there, that we have a liquor license and someone else is selling liquor in our establishment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other members have questions for the administration?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Atkins.
just 2 questions for Attorney McCain. Attorney McCain, I'm not sure if you know, but I did want to follow up. So the council had been corresponding with Attorney Colvin about, I think it was $2.1 million that we had from the CARES Act money. That was a reimbursement from public safety, but we knew that we could kind of use the money for other things based on the restrictions. So I wanted to know if there was an update in terms of what the plan was for that money. I know that there was some conversations between like the FOP and the administration, but I'm not sure if anything came about of that. So that's my first question. And then my other question is, could you talk about the Thrive Gary plan or the Thrive Gary initiative that Mayor launched last week, I think it was on Friday. I just thought it would be good for the public to have some information related to that.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. The $2.1 million or thereabouts that we received for the CARES Act, I will provide you with an update on that within the week or so.
Okay.
Once I get together with Attorney Colvin and our new city controller, Mr. Harper, and we can give you an update on that. As far as the Thrive Gary initiative, I am not well versed in the program, but I would like to ask Joy Holiday to come on to our next meeting, and then she can provide the council with a comprehensive overview of the program, how people can participate. We are very excited about it, but I'm not the best person to ask about it. She's infinitely more qualified to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Mr. President, but no, I think it would be good for that to happen. So thank you, Attorney McCain.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Any other council members have questions? I would just ask, and I'll probably ask this at least once a month, have we received any of the dollars that are still owed on the purchase of the Genesis Center by Acumen, yes, their Acumen Industries Corporation?
As of my information, Mr. President, no, we have not received any payments, but the payments are due in the end of July of this year.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from council members? Councilman Brewer?
President, this question is for our police chief. I've just looking through the thread, and you're hearing a lot of comments from chiefs throughout the surrounding communities about what took place today with the conviction in the George Floyd case. And I would just want to have a public response from our chief, because there's a lot of concerns about public safety and how situations kind of escalate, especially when the guns are involved and someone has to be shot in some instance. Can you just shed some light on the incident that has took place today with the verdict coming down, and if there's any changes that you plan on making inside of our department, the Gary Police Department here inside the city of Gary? Chief Evans.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know if you can see me. I would just like to say that today's verdict was a historic event and a stepping stone in the right direction for giving the public a sense of closure or just a sense of closure and the resetting of the relations between the community and the police. I just left a meeting this afternoon with the business community not 30 minutes ago, and we mentioned that same thing about resetting the relationship between law enforcement and the community. And the Gary Police Department is involved in a few initiatives toward that effort. We are working very closely, or will be working with the new Office of Violence Prevention. We have a police reform committee that has been formed to analyze some of our policies. We have a police commission that has an open and transparent process, which I mentioned before, that anyone can come sit in the first Thursday of every month and look at all of the discipline and accolades that we give to our officers. But as far as today's verdict, I think we've all shed a big sigh of relief that hopefully this resets that conversation within our community. Law enforcement has been put on the front lines with this. And as you saw in the trial, the chief, his entire command staff, every police officer and expert from that department in that city uniformly condemned the actions of Mr. Chauvin and called it what it was and what the verdict was, which was murder. And we are pleased that the verdict came out like it did. And we're pleased that we have this opportunity to commune with the community once again and reset our relationship.
Well said, Chief, and I do appreciate you responding to my comment there. I think the question arises after all this is over, what next? What's the next step? How do people move forward here? And I think it's a conversation that we all need to have with these families and kids and things of that nature. How do we even conduct ourselves moving forward when we have to intertwine with law enforcement? So it's a teachable moment to America. I think we all need to take heed to. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. President,
Attorney McCain?
I neglected to ask for your indulgence on one more announcement. And if you would like, I'd like to have a Corporation Counsel make an announcement on behalf of the administration.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to let the council know that we had posted an open position for the city attorney position with the city of Gary. We had a couple of applicants and have selected a city attorney to hopefully start here on Monday. That's when she's scheduled to start. But either way, we're very excited to have some assistance in our office. Her name is Angela Lockett. She's a litigator that is practiced mostly out of Chicago. She's a Gary resident, and we're very, very excited to have her, assist both the city and the council going forward.
Well, thank you, and I know that's good news because I don't know how you do what you do. I know we don't always agree, but I'm still impressed by how you're able to handle so many areas. So I'm glad to hear that there will be assistance within the Corporation Counsel's office.
Mr.
Councilwoman
President?
Barnes Caldwell?
Yes, Mr. Poe, by chance, is she a Gary resident?
He just
Yes.
said that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't hear that. I wasn't by the computer. You said yes?
Yes, she is.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm excited.
Even better.
Yes, even better.
Even better. Any other questions or discussion from council members, the administration?
Mr. President, I do neglect the one comment about the planning commission. Just last month, pretty much almost now, I was reappointed as the president of the planning commission. I will be keeping the council updated on things that come before the planning commission before it even hits the council, if it has to come before the city council. But one major thing that you'll be seeing coming up at the casino, they have put the signage along the curbside there. You can go around to the new casino, the signage has been put in, and you will be seeing a new sign that will be coming up. I don't have the specs now, but it's a pretty large sign that will be seen off the expressway that will be coming up very soon. So that's something that we can definitely look forward to seeing.
Excellent. And I know that they open May 14th, I believe is when the Guitar Smash is going to be, which is very exciting. I wanted to, ask one question about the census and when we anticipate getting those numbers back. And I guess the connected question to that is, and this is from my own information, when, this may be Attorney Williams or others help us with this, when must we begin our redistricting process in alignment with the census numbers? Because we're well into 2021. I imagine that comes up certainly within the next 12 months, I believe. So any clarification on that, Attorney Williams or Mr. Pohl or Attorney McCain?
Mr. President, I can help you in that area.
Okay, Councilman Lay.
The last redistricting that was done in the city of Gary was done by me in 2012. So again, it somehow it left the law department. It came to the council. So again, I'm not sure that we wouldn't be doing it again. It just came down that way. I believe I worked with Councilwoman Mary Brown. We did the legwork and we did the entire redistricting for the city. Because it also, we got to be very careful about that, because unfortunately there's a deficiency in the school board law, that the school board advisory board is tied to the councilmatic district as opposed to them having their own district. I've made that I've said to several, state representatives, especially Charlie Brown, and there was nothing done to correct that. So I'm not sure if the law department will be doing the redistricting or the council. I would think we would want to do that. In other words, we're redistricting ourselves. So I would think that would, unless they could object in some way, I think that should be our not only duty, responsibility, and obligation to take a look at that, because it affects us as opposed to the executive branch doing it. But
I
that's,
agree. I agree.
that's the way it was done. That's the way it was done in 12. I don't recall it ever being done that way in the past, but don't hold me to that. But we did it in 12. We did all the redistricting.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Attorney Pohl or McCain?
Mr. President, I don't have an update on the census. I will speak with Attorney Colvin. She was the point person in the administration with the census. So when I speak with her, I can report to the president and the body as on an update on that.
Thank you.
But I have nothing to add to the Councilman Lay's comments, because he's more familiar with that process than I am. I would like to, Mr. President, I'm sorry to keep going back, but I did receive an answer to Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell's question, and I wanted to relate that to her now.
Thank you.
The attorney for Marquette Park, the park department, just advised me that their office has applied for a Marquette, a liquor license for Marquette Park. So this vendor was the person with the liquor license, and therefore they were the ones that were selling it.
Okay, so we don't have one for there. That's surprising. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Intergovernmental dispute with the spending of dollars in the executive branch budget. So I want to be clear on the record that that waiver is being granted to Attorney Williams.
Yeah, so I'll put it this way, this is something that we probably should discuss offline, just because it pertains to pending litigation, and probably more appropriately discussed in maybe an executive session. But I think we've communicated that in writing. I don't think it'd probably be appropriate at this point to discuss it in a public meeting.
Yeah, I didn't want a thorough discussion. I just want it to be.
I don't think that's appropriate, though.
Oh, I agree. That's why I said I don't want a thorough discussion. But I think that there was a question about waivers, which had been talked about before in this meeting. And I just wanted to be clear that that was being granted to Attorney Williams vis-a-vis litigation related to the actions of the mayor that we've already talked about in a public meeting, where we voted to pursue litigation and to authorize Attorney Williams to represent the council in pursuing the legislation, and we explained what that was when we voted on it. So you said yes, so that's clear to me, and I don't need any further discussion about it. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? But this time we do have one public speaker. Ms. Shanice Kemp, you will have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be able to express what I have to say. First, let me apologize for having my mic on a couple times. I apologize for that. I am a community member, and I was concerned about our parks. I attended 2 Parks Department meetings, and during those Park Department meetings, I could not get the answers to the questions that I had. I was asked to submit those questions in writing, and I have done so. I submitted those questions to Ms. Reedus. I'm to understand she will be the next person taking that role, as the gentleman will no longer be in the role that he's in. I believe, I can't remember his name right now. But during that meeting, we were told to, and when I say we, there's a group of us in the community of Gary who decided to get together, and we want to do an Adopt a Parks initiative. our biggest concern is that the parks have not been cleaned or addressed any of the issues with the parks. And we were very concerned about that. We decided to start this initiative so that we can get something going. One of the reasons I attended this meeting is because I am passed to one person after another person. I need to understand the roles of who people are. Like, for instance, my precinct committeeman person, and also my council person. I'm not exactly sure about what the roles that they play, but I don't want to be disrespectful, because what we're asking for within our community, we need to be able to address that with those who are supposed to deal with it. I found that attending this meeting was also great for me, because I found out that there's some things in place to be able to address our concerns in regards to our parks. When I attended the meeting, I learned that there were some purchases made for Miller. They talked about purchasing 5 boats. They talked about an aquanetic system. They talked about our air conditioning. I'm also a member of the Indiana Northwest Beer Whist Club. We utilize the park at Tolliston. We use that pavilion quite often. We give events maybe once every other month. The last time that we used that pavilion, there was no heat. There was a hole in the roof. The refrigerator didn't work. The stove didn't work. So there was a number of concerns that we had. So there were a number of concerns that we had. When we asked about these things, we were told that Gary does not have any money. It was almost suggested that we get together and we ask the community for monies to address the park. I found that unbelievable, because I understand that Gary have a responsibility. The city has a responsibility, and we need to know or come together. There seems to be some disconnect by listening to you all. Some of the information that was given to me at the Parks Department meeting was not discussed here. It was almost as if you guys are not communicating. So as a community member, I just need to know what the responsibilities are of our precinct committeeman person, our council person, and how we plan to move forward with our parks. And again, we have a committee that we've begun in Gary. That's a Adopt a Parks initiative. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and others may. What district are you in?
2.
The 2nd district. Okay. Well, I will say this: your precinct committee person, that's a political role. So I know that historically people have looked at the precinct committee person as someone to solve their problems, but literally that's a partisan Democrat, Republican set-up election. So they really don't have any responsibility for anything. I mean, in terms of—
Excuse me for the interruption. Yeah, and excuse me for the interruption. So so that I can really understand what was happening, I asked, where can I read what the responsibilities are of a precinct committeeman person? Where are those responsibilities written? I need to understand the roles of each person. So I've called the city of Gary. I was sent to a website. I called a phone number. The mailbox is full. So it's almost as if I get the runaround. As a community member, I just need to know, what are the roles and what are the responsibilities, and where is that in writing?
Well, let me say this, and we don't want to have back and forth, but the mayor is actually the chairman of the City of Gary Precinct Organization. So you should definitely be able to talk to him. But it is all sort of written in the state statutes. Maybe I can get somebody in our office to connect with you to send you that statutory language. The same is the case with council persons. The park board is a sort of a separate entity. It has its own board. The mayor has appointees. The council has appointees. They have their own attorney, and we do funding. And so that's when you heard about funding requests and appropriations. That's where the council came in tonight in terms of this discussion and the use of dollars coming into the city. So your council person is an advocate, but they don't control. I think it's very important. We don't control what parks get what beyond our funding votes that we take. That's an administrative decision within the executive branch and to some extent within the park board. Councilman Lay may want to edify, because I know he knows this very well. and perhaps Councilman Weatherspoon, you may also have a response. We're not going to do it back and forth during public comment.
I think you've explained it well. I mean, in other words, basically the precinct committee has no authority in terms of the parks. So, Mr. President, I don't see anything further. You've indicated you would send her statues. See, I would assume she'd have to call the council office. I agree with you. If it's something concerning the precinct organization, call the mayor, 8811302. That'll get him, or at least to his office. And so he can clear up when you're asking us about things that certainly, we don't really have anything other than funding. I mean, it's beyond that. I mean, I'm not sure what you had, but I'd call the mayor about the precinct organization. Call Mr. Witherspoon and give you his number too. I guess it's not a private number, 981-7713. He can explain his role. If not, then since Mr. Brewer seems to be laughing, you can call Mr. Brewer at 712-9220. That's all of it.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. Ms. Kemp.
I appreciate that you all are allowing me to speak. But one thing I think that this has been.
Ms. Kemp, I'm sorry, but we have rules. And so you get a certain amount of time for public comment, but I don't want to start a precedent where we do back and forth. So what you may want to do is talk directly to your council person, Councilman Weatherspoon. He's on here. And so I just have to manage. It's not trying to be disrespectful, but we don't want to start a precedent where we're going back and forth. So Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yeah, just let me just make a couple of comments here. Ms. Kemp, first of all, give me a call, 219-981-7713. I am your council person. I don't know if I spoke to you or if I spoke to someone else in the district in reference to the parks. We realize that we have problems there. We realize we have problems over at Ambridge Man. We realize we have problems as it relates to some volunteerism being kicked out. We realize we have trees that are still down in our parks and a variety of things that need to be done. We are, as a council, are presently addressing those issues. But please give me a call, 219-981-7713, so we could have some further discussion and I can explain to you about the role of the committee person, as I have been a committee person for some 26 years as well as a council person. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Weatherspoon, and thank you, Ms. Kemp, for your engagement. All right. If there's no other new business before this council, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
And adjourn. Have a good evening.